Hey folks, we got a special guest today on our show. We got Ryan from Canada. We're talking about gardening and we're talking about cultivating because Ryan is an expert in cultivation. Welcome to the Row by Row Gardening Show, the best dadgum gardening show on the internet where we talk about gardening, a little bit of cooking, and growing your own food. Now sit back and enjoy. Hey folks, I'm Greg. We got Ryan here.
Hello.
All the way from Canada.
Yeah.
What part of Canada?
Well, Greg, we're about 20 minutes from Niagara Falls in southern Ontario. So
sounds like a good vacation trip for me to come visit you.
You gotta come.
I could get Niagara Falls and then you 20 minutes away?
20 minutes away.
Now I can remember you. So you own a company called
Thiessen Tillage equipment.
Yep.
And we build cultivation equipment for anywhere from the small market farm all the way up to fairly large vineyard equipment.
And you are Hoss's premier and only dealer in Canada.
Yes, we are, and we are proud to represent the Hoss brand.
Yep.
Hoss brand
So that's great. So if anybody's out there in Canada and you want any Hoss equipment, Ryan, here's your man. And we're going to throw up his website in just a little bit, or put it in the comments below. We'll have a description, a link there to Ryan's website so you can find that. Also, if people don't know, there's a company out there called Tilmor.
Yep.
Tilmor. And Ryan works with Tilmor a lot, and Tilmor is a fairly young company, but they in the forefront of developing and selling tillage equipment for the small farmer.
Yep.
And the home gardener as well, I guess.
Yeah, they do some equipment for the home gardener, but their primary focus would be from the sort of market farm, from the 2-acre scale up to, we work with them with equipment for nurseries up in the 90, 100-acre scale and beyond.
Wow. So you develop most of the implements for, and we're going to shoot up Tilmor's website as well. Tilmor makes a walk-behind tractor.
Yep, called the Power Ox.
Power Ox. They also have just come out with an electric EOX.
EOX, yep.
EOX you called it. And this is small equipment.
Yeah.
And then they also make a small tractor, and forgive me if I say this right, we down here, we call it a 140 Farmall knockoff, or that type tractor. It's the underbelly.
Yep.
So in Kentucky and down here too, back in the day, especially in Tennessee and Kentucky, they used a lot of those Farmalls, those underbelly tractors for tobacco.
Yep.
And so Tilmor makes one of those. And do you make the equipment for it?
No, so we primarily make equipment that would be on their walk-behind tractors, and then we kind of skip right over their tool carrier tractor into like big vineyard equipment that goes on fairly high horsepower vineyard tractors. So I don't think there's any equipment that we currently manufacture for their Tilmor tractor.
But you are the dealer for them.
We are the Canadian distributor and dealer
or
for
you're the premier
Tilmor.
dealer.
We are the premier dealer for both Tilmor and hosstools.
Yeah, cool. So there again in Canada, if you want any Tilmor equipment, he's the man to see there.
That's why our shirt shows a little Tilmor on
Tilmor,
there.
we got to get Hoss on the other side.
I know. This was for a trade show. That wasn't really in Hoss's wheelhouse, but.
So your background is market farmer. Well, somewhat.
Yeah, my real background was actually in vineyard growing and viticulture. I did that from about 16 to 26 years old, worked in that industry. Then my wife and I started a small market farm. We were doing about 4 acres of market farm produce, which is a fair bit of work at that scale. And we grew year round, which I know isn't a big feat down here in Georgia, but in southern Ontario that takes a bit of extra effort. And we did that for probably 10 years, and in that kind of is where Thiessen Tillage started coming out of. I was building farm equipment for myself. I had a background as a machinist, and I like building stuff, and other farmers started watching what we were building and wanting it, and just kind of grew from there.
So did you start with the Planet Junior stuff and kind of evolve from that, or how did that work?
Yeah, the first stuff we were building was the old Planet Junior walk-behind tractors from the 50s and 60s. And I was building the cultivator frames for them. I think what really got us into equipment fabrication was our undercutter, our bed lifter. And if I can tell you a quick story about that one. The very first one we ever built, I had planned to build it for myself, but I had a buddy who was another farmer, and we used to be part of this regional organization of farmers who had farm apprentices, and we would get together once a month and have a a lesson for them and kind of a field day, and then there's always a working component. And this was in October, right at the end of the season. And he wanted to buy the undercutter, so I brought it up to him, and he said, well, you know what, we're going to harvest carrots, and we're going to use this for our carrot harvesting. Well, all these apprentices had spent all summer hand digging carrots with pitchforks. We went out there and pulled the undercutter, which just goes under the crop of carrots and lifts and loosens the soil. You still got to pull them up by hand, but it's really easy to do. And they were just blown away by how easy it was, and they all went back to their host farms and were just so kind of angry that they spent all summer working so hard when there was this tool, and we had a boon of sales from that, and it just kind of carried on from there, and yeah, went into the walk behind equipment.
So the southern term for that is lifter.
Lifter, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll show a picture of that right here. I got to get me one of these. In fact, I was going to call you before you headed down and tell you to bring me one.
Oh, man.
But I've got to get me one of them right there because we like to use it for sweet potatoes.
Yep.
And onions.
Yep.
Onions. We grow a lot of onions, and that would be perfect to go through there to lift them up so you could just go out there and pull them up. I've never thought about carrots, but I can see would work wonderful there.
Yeah, pretty well any root crop that you're trying to pull out of the ground that, you know, you don't want to damage the tops on, or it's too deep and you got to dig it. It'll work for every root crop except potatoes.
Irish potatoes.
Irish potatoes, yeah,
Okay.
so your table potato. Because they're not connected enough to the stem, and it will loosen the soil around it, making digging easier. But if you try and pull the top of the plant up on an Irish potato, the potatoes are going to stay in the ground. Whereas with sweet potatoes, carrots, parsnips, even beets and things like that, they'll come up real nice with an undercutter.
And this is 3-point hitch.
Yep.
On what size tractor do you recommend for it?
Typically the smallest tractors, if they're an older 25 horse tractor, because newer ones don't have enough weight to them, and almost always it's a weight issue. So probably from about 2,500 pounds of tractor weight up might be a good metric to hit.
Yeah, I've got a 45 horsepower Kubota, which would be perfect.
Yeah, that'd be plenty of power for probably four-wheel drive.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll pull our biggest one we make right now, which is a 48.
That is the next thing on my list to get is a lifter. Yeah, I wish I'd have thought about calling you, but anyhow, we'll make that happen.
We'll make it happen. Not a problem.
So you did a lot with vineyards. Vineyards is one of your main things that you concentrate on, and that's cultivation in vineyards. This is great vineyards and things like that, correct? Talk to us about that, because that's not a strong point of mine.
Yeah, so vineyards typically in the past will have done a lot of herbicide cultivation, right, with Roundup and things like that. And what we're seeing now is actually there's a lot of Roundup resistant weeds in vineyards. Up in Canada we call it Canadian fleabane. I think in California they're calling it horsetail. Lots of different names for the same weed. And once you can't attack it with herbicide, it takes over the vineyards. And so because of that, we actually had some farmers contact us. We were only doing the veg equipment at that time and wondered if we could adapt the veg equipment into the vineyards, just bigger. First we tried using the veg equipment, but it didn't last very long in that scale. And yeah, so from that we started building equipment that works really well for mechanical cultivation, not only in organic vineyards, but actually most of my customers would be conventional growers who use herbicides, who are looking for another tool.
Wineries, things like that, I'm assuming.
Wineries, but a lot of just, in Ontario we would have a lot of wineries that would also own vineyards, but you also have a lot of standalone vineyards that are buying this kind of stuff. Yeah, we're kind of coming back from chemical agriculture into mechanical again after it got wiped out a bit in the 70s.
I noticed even on your website you got a vine puller, or
Yeah, it's a tool we just I made one a couple years ago, and now we're turning it into a production item. It kind of exists for sad reasons. This last winter, so the winter of 2021 into 22 was a bad winter in Niagara. Killed a lot of vines because it gets fairly cold there. Got hit about minus 20 Celsius, which, cough, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold.
That's cold. It's
and
cold.
Some of the vines start to die, and so we had a need for a tool that farmers could use to go pull vines out, and then they'll do a replant in there. It's not a tool that'd be used so commonly for pulling whole vineyards out. We have better tools for that, but it's sort of an pick here and there kind of tool.
I'm assuming California is a big state for you for that type of equipment?
Yeah, I think we're just getting into the California market. We were just there in California trying to learn how It's amazing how different agriculture in general, let alone vineyard growing, is in California. And so we had a good trip
Yep.
down there in I think end of October, and got to see how they grow, and yeah, it was very eye-opening. Made Niagara feel very small.
Yeah, I bet. So let's talk about some things as cultivation in the vegetable garden or for the market farmer. Both of them are pretty much the same. It's just difference of scale.
Yep.
So the wheel hoe, the Hoss wheel hoe, is a perfect piece of equipment for the small garden. And as you guys know, we got oscillating hoes, we got plows, we got all that kind of stuff that's perfect. Now, when you get above that a little bit and you start getting into bigger gardens, some of this other equipment comes into play there.
Yep.
What's the electric one called again? The EOX.
EOX.
The EOX uses some of our equipment on the back of it.
Yep.
But then when you get it from there, you get up to what we call the power ox. And the reason I want to talk about the power ox, folks, is because I've got one. Ryan brought me one last year, and I use it some in my garden. There we go. I told you to turn yours off, and I left mine on. So I got a power ox last year.
Yep.
And I love it. Now, mind you, you need a decent sized garden to use it. But it has got some very unique tools to it, and it covers a lot of ground in a hurry as far as mechanical cultivation. Now, I want to talk about something here today that a lot of people may not know out there that is a useful tool, but it has its place. And it doesn't necessarily have its place on the wheel hoe. See if we can get this over here. I'm going to hand you one, and I'm going to get me one.
Oh, we each go.
And folks, this right here is called the finger weeder. Now this is the newest, latest, greatest thing in cultivation. Of course, it's waning just a little bit, but still they are used a lot, especially in organic farming.
Yep.
First time I ever seen them used was on it wasn't a Tilmor, it was one of the other tractors. Oh man, tough built.
Okay.
They had them on a tough built tractor, and they run them down through some beets that we had at a show. We had a garden at this show here. I was pretty amazed at the work. Now what they do, they kind of go up at an angle. We got these things, but they kind of go at an angle like this right here.
Yep.
And they go into that plant, and they actually disrupt the plant a little bit. They actually touch the plant. I'll let you talk about how they work.
Yeah, so if you set yours down on the table there, Greg, and I'm going to set mine just about like this. So what a finger weeder does, usually you want some kind of steel in front of it, like a beet sweep or something to work the soil beside the row, because finger weeders don't like to break crust, they like to go into a broken crust. And you see here on the bottom are these, called them the drive spikes or drive claws, and they're set in at a smaller diameter than the fingertips. And so these are set at an angle that those drive spikes are what actually engage the soil, and they cause the fingers, because of the difference in diameter, to spin at a faster speed than you're moving. And those fingers then flick soil through the row, or flick weeds. And I say weeds, but really what we're talking about with finger weeders or any in-row cultivation where we're weeding right around the plants is we're talking about white thread stage weeds. And it's the thing I end up getting tired of talking about at the end of trade shows.
Thread size weeds is a whole show within itself here.
Yeah.
You know, this guy out west called Jason Weston that probably talks about those, has done more education with me talking about weeding with thread size weeds more than anybody. What that means, folks, is it's getting them when they first emerge and they got that white long root on them. That's what we call thread size weeds.
Yep. And I often, when I'm teaching, part of my job is not just to develop and sell cultivation equipment, but it's to teach people how to use it. And typically we'll say, if you can see the weeds, it's too late. You always want, if it's bare ground and it's been 7 to 10 days, that's about the cycle time in vegetables for this kind of equipment. It's time to get out there and go run them.
Or after rain.
Or after rain, yeah. So if it's been 4 days and and you got more rain coming, just go out there and do it. You're going to disturb that seed bed. And it's really neat. And if you're ever wondering if you should go and do it, you're not sure, just go rake your hands through the soil and you'll see those white thread stage weeds there. And just removing them with things like finger weeders or tine weeders is like the greatest feeling ever. And so when we run these, they run vertically like this. And if you hold that one there for me, Greg. And typically when we set them flat, we want to set them about a finger's width apart like that. So that way they don't actually work here, they work up here. And so that when they're, let's see if I can do it on the camera, when they're working, they actually come up and cross each other a little bit. And you got to play with that a little bit, but that's kind of that fingers width apart is your starting point. If you got gentler crops, you got to be a little further away, but tougher crops, you can push them closer together. Now these are the softest in this size that we would sell. It's called the medium. There's a hard one, it's fairly stiff. And yeah, it's a little bit scary running them the first few times because your crop is fairly disrupted. But things like the finger weeders, they work on that differential in size between the weed crop and the crop you're trying to keep. So my favorite example is carrots. Because carrots, I can run these fingers in carrots 7 days after germination when they're a little baby frond. But what you don't realize about carrots, unless you've ever tried the tray grow 'em, which I have, it's interesting, is that by the time that cotyledon emerges, the first little green leaves, that taproot's already that long. And so you can go in there and rough them up pretty good. Usually with something like finger weeders, we'll do about a 10% overseed just to make sure. And then, but we don't thin after that. We just go in there and they do just the right amount of thinning of that to give us a good stand.
And this tool right here is an invaluable tool to the organic farmer.
Yes. Yeah. Whenever we set people up with cultivation tools, if they're after just one tool that'll do sort of the most bang for their buck, we always set them up with finger weeders with some kind of in-row toolage, between-row tool in front of that. And but yeah, they are such a handy tool. There's a lot of other neat tools that you can add to your arsenal after that, but this is probably the best starting point once you get up to that mechanical cultivation.
So the question may be, or I've had it posed to me in the past, why don't we put these on wheel hose?
So one of the main reasons you don't put them on wheel hose is that you're usually not going fast enough. So and wheel hose benefit from that push-pull motion a little bit, and it's a little bit tricky to get the finger weeders to work right on that backstroke, but it's really about speed. And you want to go with these typically, even on a power ox, you're moving, you're doing a fast walk trying to keep up with that, and they work better. Almost all cultivation equipment works better the faster you go, and so that's typically why we're not putting them on wheel hose. It's just not quick enough.
Yeah, the speed's just not there. So wonderful, wonderful tool. It's just not meant for the wheel hose. There's a company or two out there that's tried it, maybe advertised on that. From our research, it just will not work on a wheel hoe.
Yeah, and the nice thing is about a wheel hoe, with say the oscillating blade, is you can bring that a lot closer to the crop row. I mean, you can get a half-inch away if you're trying to be careful with it. And that coupled with a little bit of burying of what's left in the center usually does a fairly good job on the wheel hoe side.
So plants such as brassicas, you can get fairly aggressive with this right here.
Especially once they're well rooted, yep.
Yeah, and get in there. And yet, like you said, you think to yourself, man, I'm damaging my plant, but you're really not doing much damage there.
No, but certainly it's the first time I ever ran them in carrots. I was really nervous doing it, and I thought, you know, this, because we were farming for income at that time.
Yeah.
Am I going to lose this?
Yeah.
And no, it was great. Definitely a learning curve, but no, they're such a handy tool to have.
It's one of those things for me, and I'd watched plenty of videos on how they work and everything, but for me to see it with my own eyes and stand there and see it and feel it, it was unveiling to me just how well they work and how they work.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you just kind of have to have that experience with, and then you kind of, it's like a light comes on, you get it.
Yeah.
Finger weeders. What's your next favorite implement besides this right here?
For
small scale cultivation,
small
whether it be in the
scale
pads or whether you're trying to get close to the plant.
Yeah, so probably in the next favorite would be something like the if we're talking for the power ox, it'd be in the A blade or tender plant hoe combo,
which is similar to our sweep.
Similar to your sweep, yeah. The A blade, so the tender plant hoe is similar to your sweep, where it's a vertical plate and then a one-sided. The A blade. Be very similar to your wing sweeps, where it comes down in the center and sweeps out. And that all depends on what I'm trying to do with the cultivation equipment, so they're sort of equally matched. I really like things like sweeps or the A blades, because you get a nice vertical side plates that dictate if you're too far one way or the other, too close to your row. But you're also not getting any soil movement into the row. and so you're not going to bury small seedlings, things like that. That's a big help, especially with something like finger weeders that do want to move a bit of soil. If you can give them that sort of shelf that's there. But tender plant hosts start to get a little trickier, or sweeps, especially if you don't want to flip them around when you get too close to the sides of crops that are fairly tall, right? So with the sweeps, you can flip them in. With wheel hose, I'm going to be honest, my favorite tool is the oscillating hoe. I love a 8-inch oscillating hoe on a single wheel hoe.
I tell every customer, I said, the toughest implement we got is an 8-inch oscillating hoe. That thing's built. I mean, you can tear it up because metal's going to do one or two things under enough pressure. It's going to be in the break.
Yeah.
It can be tore up, but them things are tough. So somebody's got questionable soil, clay, rocks, whatever, I always say go with that 8-inch oscillating hoe.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it, and even when we were starting to get into this, we always, we were 4-acre farm, still using wheel hose, because sometimes you need the finesse of that tool you can't get when you're moving that 4 miles an hour, maybe 3.5, something like that. But yeah, those kind of for that size of thing, that's always where I start, is with the tender plant hoe or hay blades coupled with a finger weeder. And then what we often talk about with folks is finding the holes in your system from there, and then filling them with other tools, because everyone's situation and soil type is a little bit different.
Yeah, or scale.
Or scale, yep. And but what I love about cultivation tools is, especially if you're starting small and growing, you're never gone wrong buying the small equipment. So, if you're starting with a ½ acre or an acre, starting with a wheel hoe is perfect. You haven't wasted anything, because you're still going to use that wheel hoe at 8 and 10 acres. And same with the power ox. We have folks that start with the power ox, they graduate into full wheel tractor cultivation. Well, the nice thing about the power ox is you can still give it to someone that is less skilled, doesn't know how to use the big tractor. Sometimes you need to do that one row of something, sometimes you need both of them at the same time. And so you're never really wasting in cultivation equipment, starting smaller and then graduating up from there.
So we walked through the garden earlier.
Yep.
And you see what I'm growing.
Yeah.
Let's get going on down here. And you was telling me that you what y'all can grow right now is what?
So right now, we're in Ontario, which is sort of southern Ontario, one of the warmest places in Canada, except maybe parts of BC. And if it's not in a cold frame or a hoop house, there's nothing growing. Now,
can y'all grow kale, spinach, Swiss chard, any of that right now?
Yep. And so when we say we're growing it right now, what we actually should be saying is we grew it in the fall, and we're keeping it alive right now. And so I told you that my wife and I farmed year-round. And so what we did is we had a whole series of unheated hoop houses. We call them cold frames. I don't know.
Yeah, high tunnels.
High tunnels, yeah. That kind of stuff. And so we had, I think, 4 20 by 100 of these, like 100 feet long, 20 feet wide. And so we would start succession planting in there in August and September, but pretty well mid-September was the latest we could actually plant something, and it had to be fairly fast growing. Sometimes folks will plant carrots then, so that they can get a jump on spring, because they'll kind of stay in stasis almost for a while. And right now in December, in our area, you can still get away with just that cold frame. As we got into January, now we'd have to put secondary, like little wire hoops over it with some frost cloth on it, and build these little shelters. It's amazing what a thin layer of frost cloth over that would do, because you'd pull that off, and it could be minus 15 Celsius outside and cold, and it would still be, the ground would almost not be frozen in there. And of course we're picking varietals that can handle that, because there is some freezing.
Sure.
But
so carrots, Swiss chard, spinach, that is some things that you would hold over through the winter?
Yep. Lettuces we would do.
Really?
Yep, there are some really good lettuces that would hold almost all winter. Rouge de Hivra, it's a red one, it would stay pretty good. I'm trying to remember everything we did. All kinds of salad greens, salad turnips, that kind of stuff. We also had really good, we did a lot of storage crops, so our potatoes. Carrots, actually, we wouldn't do carrots in hoop houses. We would do those in open field cultivation, and then we would cover them with straw. And then we would go back and dig them in December. And what that did is that that freeze-thaw cycle, they would get cold. puts more sugars into the carrot roots, signals that plant. And man, those are the best carrots I've ever had.
I tell people these two crops to me, carrots and English peas, that's what we call them. Y'all may call them something else. Those two things have the most distinct, different flavor, homegrown versus buying them in the store.
Yep. And it's different too. Like our summer carrot crop wasn't as good as our winter carrot. There is nothing like a winter carrot crop that's had that freeze thaw. And we would do the same thing with Brussels sprouts and stuff like that out in the field, where we intentionally left them there to do that freeze thaw, so they move away from that kind of bitterness people don't like into these really sweet little spheres of deliciousness. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's been a few years since we ran in the high tunnel, so I'm having trouble remembering everything that was in there. But we would do, we would have some high tunnels with tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers that we would season push as far as we could, and we would protect them. And so we would have, you know, our first frost dates in about October, early October, and then everything's dead after that. Well, we would have tomatoes in November. And not growing real fast anymore, but some
still
of
there.
that. Yeah, and then we would sort of plant either side of that tomato plant with lettuces and things like this, and then we could pull the tomato out and we'd have kind of dual use for that space.
So we still have peppers,
Yep.
harvesting peppers here, and this is the middle of December. And also cherry tomatoes. I've got cherry tomatoes in my garden. Of course, we got lots of greens and things like that. Speaking of frost covers, we're adding a couple of this for next year. We'll have them on the website in a couple of weeks there. We don't use a lot of frost covers, but I definitely see where they could come, you know, for our northern friends.
Yep.
But we do have that occasional cold spell where you want to protect something, especially strawberries.
Yep. Yeah, done a lot of frost cover on strawberries, and so with frost covers, one of the best things you can do, especially in a climate like yours, or maybe a little more north where you might have you know, you might not need it, it might not be beneficial, but as you go and you pre-hoop your whole field with those little hoops, and then you get sandbags or something like that, and you just have everything ready to go. And then, of course, like, you know, we're watching the weather all the time, but to not have to go put all the hoops in, you just go roll the frost cloth out, sandbag it, and it's good.
And when you need to roll it back, you can just simply roll it back and leave your wire hoops.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and just leave those until you're ready to pull the crop out. And in Ontario, that usually meant spring because they were kind of stuck in there. But yeah, we did those hoops both out in the field and in the greenhouse space, because just putting frost cloth on our hoops out in the field bought us an extra month or so out there, and so then we could put more value into our deep winter product in the hoop house, because that's always your super valuable space because you don't have enough of it. And but frost cloth, if you're going to try and grow anywhere into winter, is invaluable.
Oh, absolutely. Man, that's good stuff. Cultivation. Cultivation, that's what you and I build our business on, is moving dirt around.
That's right.
Now, getting them weeds out there. So you noticed something earlier. I'm going to tell everybody about this right here. You see this nice card here?
Yep.
This is going in every order in December.
Okay.
So if somebody places an order with Hoss in December in the U.S., they get this right here. Now, what's inside of this card is what I'm going to show you next. I'm going to get that old trusty knife out. Is a pen. And everybody loves pens and stickers, don't we? Pens and stickers.
I was looking for some for my daughter on the way up down here.
Yeah. So these pens right here, I want to show everybody how these things work. They have these little rubber things on the back. Well, there it is right there. It says Get Dirty and Hoss. And on the back side, you have these little rubber things that push in. So you can put it on your hat, you can put it on your shirt, put it about anywhere you want to. And Mr. Ryan, that was for you.
Oh,
for being on our show today. How about that? It's wonderful, wonderful.
I'm going to demonstrate how to maybe not put it on.
You come all the way from Canada for that.
Came all the way to Canada just for this pin. Look at that, I'm going to put it.
Yeah.
You were saying I didn't have Haas on this shirt. Well,
now you do.
No, I'm too close to the edge of the pocket.
So traditionally here on Row by Row Show, we do a corny joke every week, and I got one for you.
All right.
Okay. So why is the Grinch such a good gardener? Ooh, now this is a good one right here.
Yeah.
Sometimes our corny jokes are a little more on the corny side than others, but I feel like this one's a winner right here. Why is the Grinch such a good gardener?
I don't know.
Because he has a green thumb.
Because he has, oh, that's a good one.
All right. Folks, we have the Grinch hid on the set here somewhere. So if you see the Grinch, which is the figurine, and it moves week to week, put the comments below where that green Grinch is, and we'll do a drawing and draw a name out, and we'll send you a special gift for finding that Grinch right here. We kind of do a drawing. Put all the names in there and draw them out. So that's the way we do it. One more thing, potatoes. When do y'all plant y'all's Irish potatoes?
Probably April to May.
Okay. So our friends in Florida, southern Mississippi, southern Louisiana, plant theirs in January. We plant ours in February. But we have potato orders on our website pre-sale as we speak. So you can go to the website, check out those potatoes, go ahead and get your order in. And when it's time, our first shipment will be in January, around the middle of January. We will ship that order to you. Now you guys down south are going to get yours first. And then you guys further north will get yours after that. But you will have them in plenty of time for when you're supposed to plant them. But what it does is guarantee you that you'll have your seed potatoes. You can go ahead and buy them, and we'll put yours back to the side, and when it's time, we'll ship them to you. Seed potatoes. You plant yours when?
End of April into the end of May.
And gather them?
October.
Man. You know we can grow two crops down here. We grow a spring crop. We'll gather ours in April.
Okay.
We can plant them. A lot of people, when we did this year's been planting them in the fall. We can grow a fall crop as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we would harvest new potatoes as soon as they're big enough, little guys. But we always, we grow a lot of potatoes. It's my favorite crop to grow ever is potatoes. You'll find other podcasts I did where I admit that. But they're probably just about dead by mid-September, the plants. But then I leave them intentionally for 3 weeks because once the plant dies, we were doing it for storage potatoes. So the skin will harden a bit more in that kind of 3 weeks once it's under the soil. And then we could take them out and be fairly aggressive with them and they would be fine. But yeah, we were always harvesting that. We tried to just after Canadian Thanksgiving, which is in early October.
Storage on them things could go all through the winter.
We would have potatoes till June.
Wow. Then it starts all over again.
It starts all over again.
All right, folks, let's see. Christmas, we got gift certificates online for sale, so if you don't know what to get, you can always buy them a gift certificate. We got a lot of great Christmas gifts on our website for less than $99, or if you want to spend a little bit more than that, we have some more of that. We did a show last week where we talked about Christmas gifts. So check all that out, gift certificates. Man, it was great. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure, Greg.
Yep. So check out Ryan's site, Thiessen Equipment in Canada, and also Tilmor. Get some more information on some of those larger cultivation tools, or if you're in Canada, Ryan's your man on the haul stuff. Thank you for joining us.